Good evening, those of you that are online early. This is Mike Kolwick, and you're welcome to say hello if you'd like. Those of you that have logged in, I want to again welcome you. We do have a chat section in the lower portion of the screen. You're welcome to make use of that, as well as the Q&A. Whichever you prefer to use is fine with us. Hello, Anthony from Wisconsin. That's Dr. Anthony Coletta. Welcome. I hope you've all had a good day. I hope you've had a chance now to get home, or if you're still at the office, either way, I hope that it's been a good day, and now that the evening has arrived, you have a chance to relax and are looking forward to learning about Snap-on Smile. So we're glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. Hello. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have the link to join the program? Okay. Yeah, I need to get you in a position where you're able to. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are you logged in under? What name?
Oh, you know, it's under Jenny. She forwarded me the link.
Okay, Jenny Mulligan.
Maybe that. Yes.
Okay. All right, so you're now a panelist,
Okay.
and it's got Jenny's picture. You need to unmute.
I don't see. Oh, well. Can you hear me okay?
Actually, I think I clicked on the wrong person here. I clicked on Heather McGee.
Okay.
So bear with me here.
Hi.
Hi, Heather. I think I clicked on you in error.
Okay.
Accidentally made you a panelist. So
Oh, that's great. What can I help you with?
bear with me here. I'm trying to add our speaker, Kris Schermerhorn. So I'm just going to I'm going to mute you for the moment here. Okay. Thank you, Heather.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay. Kris, you've now been made a panelist, so you should be able to speak. All right, Kris, we're waiting for you whenever you're ready. At this point, you're still muted and your video is not on. So whenever you're ready, Kris, just go ahead. Looks like you're no longer with us. Somehow or another, you got logged off. Is that what you intended to do? All right, so hang on one second, Kris. Good evening, everyone. This is Mike Kolwick. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're attempting to get our speaker, Kris Schermerhorn, on the line. We've got a little bit of a technical difficulty, so relax. We will get this fixed in just a few moments. Bear with us. Thank you.
What, honey? I'm on this call. What do you need?
I would have sworn that those two face paintings were in the den, but I can't find them.
Don't worry. I'm on this call. I can't deal with it right now. Is Dad wanting to hang them with you?
No, but I went into it. Well, I haven't asked him.
This weekend might be a better time.
Hello, everyone. Good evening again. I apologize for the delay in our getting started. We've run into a bit of a technical snag for our speaker. I appreciate your patience. I expect to have this resolved within the next minute or two. So again, hang in there, enjoy your evening, and again, my thanks for your patience. We will be right back. Hello, everyone. I'm back. Mike Colwick here. It's 9 minutes after the hour. Again, my apologies for the delay. Our speaker, I can see right now, Kris Schermerhorn, is in the process of connecting. He is in the Washington, D.C. area, and I'm here in California. And I do sincerely apologize for the delay that we're having. So please bear with us. We will get Kris one way or another. Thank you so much. I'll be right back.
Hello?
Yeah, Kris, are you there?
Yeah, so now what I'm entering is an error with a recap captcha occurred. And I've tried a couple of times. I don't know whether they RE.
Okay, right now it's showing Jenny Mulliken is on. She's in the meeting. So I've got 40 people waiting here, buddy.
Yeah, I've never experienced this before. So I got your email. I have it here. I go down, register.
I'm going to go to, oh God.
So here I'm join the webinar. I enter in my name. I email my phone. Sorry. So, here I am not a robot.
You shouldn't be getting that at all.
I have no idea. I'm just clicking on the. All right, now do you hear me? I hear you.
Well,
I hear you on the computer now. Do you hear me on? You hearing me at all? I see you.
all right, Chris, can you unmute, please?
I see the audience. Let's see. Mute my microphone. Can you hear me at all now?
Chris, you just logged off somehow. I can hear you on my phone, but you are no longer in the meeting. Okay, here we go. Just 1 second.
All right, now can you hear me?
Yeah, Chris, I can hear you now. So
Can
go
you
ahead and share your screen, please.
All right, so you just something, okay, hold on. So you flashed something up on the, or something came up on this.
Okay, so you're, we can all hear you now, Chris.
All right.
So go ahead and share your screen.
Can you make me the presenter?
I'm going to add you as a co-host here, so just bear with me here.
Because it's
Okay?
not giving me the option to share my screen yet.
Yeah, just 1 second here, amigo. Okay, there you go. Okay, you should be able to share now. There you go. All right, everyone. I really thank you for your patience. Good evening. This is Mike Kolwick with Dental Masters Laboratory, and I'm about to welcome you to Kris Schermerhorn's presentation on Snap-on Smile. This is a product that I'm very excited to share with you. I have spent time with Kris. I've also spent time with the primary manufacturer of this material at Meyerson, and also the folks at Denmat, and I think it has some wonderful applications. So Kris is going to go over both the indications and contraindications for Snap-on Smile. Again, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I do have an indication from Dr. Hirsch that the volume is low, so I will attempt to adjust that. In the meantime, Kris, I'm going to let you get started.
I'll talk loud. Yeah, thanks, guys. You know, technology, you love it 1 minute and it'll bite you in the next. Not sure what was going on there, but we'll get rolling right along. So, yeah, the Snap-on Smile, it's exciting. I've been working with this material to make these Snap-on Smiles since 2003. And I've seen this evolution happen with this material. It's been really, really exciting. I am going to show you today, what these things are made out of, how to make these things, or kind of how they work in the mouth. And we're going to show you, there's a lot of different uses for these other than just something cosmetic for patients who have really their dentition's in bad shape. So we're going to kind of show you all that. And that kind of brings me to the first slide here. A smile is an important thing. And, you can see some of the stats we have here and how it can affect your life if you have a really bad smile. And that's really what we're going to apply this appliance to in our industry, are patients who have really deteriorated smiles, healthy smiles, but just really not in good shape as far as cosmetically. We'll kind of talk about, how this appliance can be used and kind of when it should be used or where it should be used. And the smile is a very important thing, but it will be a small part of what this appliance can do in your practices. All right, so what is a Snap-on Smile? So just to make sure that everyone understands, this is something that takes no prepping of the teeth in 99% of the situations. There's really no adapting of the natural dentition. Totally reversible. There's nothing that can be harmed by this because it can, put it in one day and take it out the next. It's nothing permanent. So it's really very much like a partial. Just kind of a partial that'll add to the aesthetics, and you can kind of do more things with it. So patients will be able to eat and drink and do everything they would normally do with a partial. Same thing as far as wearing it. Wear it during the day and they take it out at night, put it in some sort of a cleaner. And it's a really nice appliance that way. And you can really do some neat things with patients who have really compromised smiles, as you can see here. Now, this isn't veneers, this isn't crown and bridge, this isn't implants, but it really suits a section of the patients that you'll see. We really no other appliance will, for just the sake of the appliance fitting into place and being able to use it, also because of financial reasons. It really can help a lot of patients. So essentially what this appliance does is engage the undercut of the teeth, a lot like a clasp does on a partial, except for we're surrounding the tooth, encompassing the tooth, going down over the belly of the tooth and locking into place. It's, very much like a clasp. Nice thing about it is it's a more solid appliance in the mouth than really a partial would ever be. So again, no prepping of the teeth, no adapting of the teeth for the high majority of the cases. We'll talk about some situations where you may need to do some adaptation to the teeth, but generally speaking, there isn't any. So these appliances can be used as a temporary solution to be worn for, a few months, a year, while they're going through some sort of a treatment. And we'll talk about that as we go along, the different reasons why you may use it as a temporary option, but it can also be used as a long-term option, again, very much like a partial, whether it be metal or flexible type partial. So for several years is what we would hope to have the appliance in, as is referred to as a long-term appliance, as well as a smile enhancer. So kind of a lot of different uses. And again, we'll get into that, when and where and why to use these appliances. So the ideal cases, as you evaluate a patient and kind of decide whether this would be appliance for them, it's a very, very important question. Probably the biggest struggle that a doctor and in the lab will have is making sure that this is prescribed properly, that it is a case that the patient isn't going to refuse. Right, so missing teeth, we can replace those with Pontics as part of this appliance. Uneven spacing, irregular sized, chipped, but healthy situations in the mouth that the patient just can't afford crowns, can't afford veneers. This could really be a nice solution. Discolored teeth, it's going to cover all the teeth so they can drop down some shades, and if there's tetracycline or some sort of a staining that's happened, can lighten the teeth. And a collapsed vertical, probably one of the more exciting uses of the appliance is in patients with a collapsed vertical, where we want to open the patient back up into a normal position that they were kind of born with, that over the years they've deteriorated. So, this appliance really works nice as a permanent option for that situation, or a temporary one to kind of transition them into maybe mouth rehab. Contraindications. That was kind of our indicated cases, the situations where we would use this. Contraindications. All right, so periodontal disease, whatever the situation, we want to make sure the patient is healthy. We want to make sure that they are in a good position to have this. We don't want to cause more problems than we help. Of course, the dentulous, that's a denture. That's an application for a denture, not for a snap-on smile. Going over existing dentures, there's just not the retention there. It's just not going to work properly. So that's not an indication. So severe class 3 and really any malocclusion that's pretty severe, unless you can really open them up, and then you might be able to move things into a better position. But generally speaking, any severe malocclusion is going to be difficult with these appliances. Diastemas. So these appliances can actually correct diastemas, or they can actually not correct diastemas. And what I mean by that is, if the patient has generally small teeth and they have diastemas, you make the teeth bigger to fill the interproximals, it can look okay. If the patient has large teeth already and large diastemas, well, now you're going to make these massive teeth to fill that gap, and it's just going to look like clown teeth, right? So large diastemas with large teeth, a no. Smaller teeth with smaller diastemas, probably a yes. Dark discolored teeth, right? So if you look at the previous slide, we talked about discolored teeth, where this is an ideal situation because it's going to go over. The only reason that I have here dark and discolored teeth is if the appliance is thin. So if you make the snap-on smile down to about 5 to 6/10 of a millimeter thick, which you can on the facial, you can make it pretty nice and thin, it will let more color through, and you may see some of the darkness of a really dark discolored tooth coming through. If the appliance is more in the 8/10 to a millimeter, millimeter 2 range, you're going to block out any darkness on the underside. So dark and discolored teeth, you have to be careful. You would want to let the lab know, hey, give me at least 8/10 to a millimeter on the facial to make sure that we cover this dark color of the underlying teeth showing through. And then large teeth, kind of talked about that with the diastemas, but you want to make sure that those large teeth, they're only going to get bigger. And so you want to make sure that if they really have a large size tooth, let's not go bigger and not have a satisfied patient. So, that's kind of the whenever you see a patient, you evaluate the situation. Those are some of the things you want to look for in deciding to offer the appliance or to tell the patient that this is maybe not a good appliance for them. So using this appliance as a partial is actually probably one of the more popular applications of the appliance. You could do Pontics on it, right? It's encompassing the teeth. It's really a nice appliance that way also, in that just about every part of the appliance becomes a rest. So when you talk about appliance that is truly tooth-borne, this is it. When we do a cast partial frame or a partial that has rests, those rests are what makes it tooth-borne. And it's just a small little finger, a little spoon-shaped rest that's supporting on the tooth. With the snap-on smile, you're encompassing all the teeth, almost all the parts of the occlusion. So truly will keep the pressure off the ridges if you do have edentulous areas posteriorly or really anywhere. It'll keep that pressure off and can make for a really nice option instead of a partial. Now, keep in mind, almost always, and I say almost, but a great percentage of the time, you are going to have to open the bite. This is going to go over the occlusion. And so, you know, you're looking at 0.8 to 1 millimeter or 2, depending on how the patient's occlusion is how thin we can make these occlusions, or how less or the least or most amount that we would have to open the bite with these. So, again, you know, we talked about partials. Flippers are also a nice one. In other words, it's just kind of like an Essex bridge, but one that's going to last because it's a tough, strong material, right? So Essex bridges, if you guys don't know, are kind of like a clear Invisalign type suck down material that will have a pontic tooth on it. So this is kind of the same thing, just all the teeth are covered, but you, again, just like with the Essex, you will have to open the bite. So keep that in mind, but it is a nice option. Now you'll see these windows that are open. You can do that, but generally in here, you're still keeping the bite open, right? So even if you see this occlusion totally encapsulated, you probably have pretty close to the same amount of occlusal opening between each. So don't let that throw you that you think that that's closed right down, because that's not the case. So here's a couple of examples I'll go through where you can kind of see how these appliances can help, you know, because this guy's missing posterior teeth, and we could just make a partial back there, and yeah, it would allow him to eat, but cosmetically, it's not really going to get an advantage. But here we do, we go over his teeth, we close a little bit of a gap there, cover up the little chipping he has on the incisal, and put him in a nicer smile at the same time as we give him teeth to eat with. So it's just a nice option. You can see here with this appliance, replacing those laterals, you can see there's a diastema, and you can see her teeth got bigger. She can pull it off, and that's really, you'll find, kind of working with your lab, sending pictures, giving a lot of information to the lab so that you guys together can make sure that these are definitely an appliance that's going to suit whichever patient you're pursuing with it. You know, it really depends. You know, there's times where a lab might get a model and the teeth will look generally kind of medium sized. You go, okay, well, doctor's asking for a snap-on smile. I think this should work fine because these teeth don't look big at all. Now, those teeth could be in a patient that has a very small face and very small features, and they actually look big, and now we make a snap-on over top of them and they're even bigger. We will know that as a laboratory if you were to send us pictures. So just without any appliance in, normal smile, have the patient smile, take a picture, make sure that goes with the case, email it, whatever it is, so that the lab can help you to evaluate whether they think that this patient will be able to pull off an appliance that goes over their teeth, that make their teeth a little bigger. And as I said, she pulls it off really nicely. You know, it fills her smile and she looks really good. Again, we have the two centrals missing. I'm unsure with this patient, but it almost looks like an accident or something had happened there. And so we can fill that gap. Again, there's going to be no pressure on the ridge because everything's going to be resting upon the existing teeth. So this is an example where it'll turn out really nice. We can fill that gap. The teeth look in normal size. And now you have a patient who cosmetically now is pleasing, as well as allows him to eat a little celery or bite off a little sandwich because he has some front teeth. Again, here, you know, we're going to jump from partials over to something more cosmetic, strictly cosmetic. You're not missing any teeth. We're just going over top of what's there. And usually the patient has a lot of bonding and different things, but they're healthy. Their teeth aren't going to be deteriorated by having this appliance because they're healthy. One thing that I've heard, and it works really well, I think, to kind of make sure that that everyone's expectations are managed. If you have a scale of 1 to 10, right? 1 being the most deteriorated, ugly smile you can imagine, and 10 being the most beautiful smile you can imagine. Right? If we get into that 5 or 6 range, maybe with a snap-on smile, we might get them to a 7 or 8 range, right? So patient may not be happy spending a good bit of money to just jump 1 or 2 notches on that aesthetic range, right? So you want to make sure that the patient understands that they're in that range. You may, and they come in and say, I want veneers or a snap-on smile. Well, they're not the same thing, right? Veneers are way more expensive, and there's a reason for it. This is appliance is plastic, and it's not porcelain. It doesn't have layers to it. It doesn't have transition to it, right? And don't get me wrong. I don't want to not sell you on this appliance. But I want everyone to be on the same page. I want to be realistic about things. Now, if you have that same scale, 1 being the ugliest, 10 being the prettiest, right? That patient is a 1, 2, 3, 4 range, and we jump them up to a 6 or 7. Now you're gonna have a patient crying in the chair because of the difference in their smile. So I think that is a really good visualization for the doctor, right? As I'm talking to you guys, I think it's also a good thing that you can use for patients to kind of explain to them, look, you really need crown bridge or you really need veneers to accomplish what you're looking for. And so I really would hope that you guys will use that. That'll help the lab, to really, and you send those pictures. These guys, I've done one-on-one training with them. They know what they're doing with these appliances, as well as if you send those pictures, they're going to have enough experience that they can also help you kind of say, hey, let me give the doctor a call, make sure that we think that this appliance is going to satisfy the patient's needs. I have another example.
Let me interrupt you, sir.
Yep.
Thank you so much for a great presentation. I do want to remind our attendees that there is a chat section available at the bottom of the screen. So if you do have a question, feel free to put your question in the chat section or the Q&A. I'm monitoring both. And feel free to raise your hand in the chat or the Q&A, and I'll pass those on to Kris as appropriate. Thanks. Go ahead, sir.
Yep. Thank you. All right. And you can see this lady, right? So here's a good example. She's a beautiful woman, and you can really see the difference in what this appliance did for her smile, right? She has some diastemas that we were able to close. The teeth, not too big for her features, really fits in good. She went with a little bit of a brighter smile. She pulls it off, and so there's a lot that goes into evaluating these cases and making sure that a patient can do this. And, you can also, once these are digitally designed, right? So if you look here, here's a puck and here's an appliance that's in there milled, right? So this is what the labs are going to do is they're going to digitally design. They're going to what's called nest, which places it in there, and it's going to be milled, right? So before it's actually milled, they will have a digital version of it. And so if you want to have some input, you're going to see it on a model just like the lab does. You're not going to see it with lips and stuff. And there are some ways that might be able to happen. You'll have to talk to the guys at the lab about that. But, they'll be able to show you and let you take a look at that design before they kind of go ahead with things, either whether it's by a picture, screenshot, or actually a live, you guys can kind of jump on together online and look at it, and they can turn it and move it and do all kinds of stuff. And it might not be a bad idea on certain cases to kind of get that approval. So both you guys feel like you're on the same page. All right, and so, we kind of showed you some examples of partials and how to use these in that same situation. We showed you just strictly aesthetics and showed you some examples of that. Now we're talking about provisionals, right? So what I mean by this is, this is kind of like a take-home preliminary wax up to where the patient can try it in, get some shaping done, make sure that they want rounded, they want softer, they want whatever. And then they wear it and decide, if this is something cosmetically that they'd like to move to. And once they decide that, you can actually prep the teeth and put this back in as the temporary. Just fill it up with some Tempon or some acrylic even, and just put it back in as a temporary while the crowns are being made. So can really work nice that way You know, and you can see here just little small laterals. We filled those in and kind of balanced everything out. This one here, of course, this patient's really broken down and destroyed those teeth. Again, they're healthy. The gum tissue looks healthy. So the appliance comes over top and they can kind of try that, opening them into a new position. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but they can try that out. Make sure that it doesn't, you know, it's scary opening a patient up. And this allows you to try it before you put them in crowns and you find out they can't handle it. And next thing you know, you're taking a knockdown wheel just about to the occlusion of these crowns that you had made to try to grind this patient back down into a position they might be comfortable with. You can do all that work ahead of time with these. And this material, the acetyl resin, is a very nice material to grind on. You can use all your same acrylic carbides to grind on, and it grinds beautifully. So if you do have to do some major reduction in areas, if you are tinkering around with opening and occlusion, you'll be able to adjust it very easily. And the nice thing is you can pull it out of their mouth, adjust it, put it back in. How does it feel? So it's a nice option to have whenever you're doing a full mouth rehab like that. And you can see here, she's got her canine, and you know, orthodontics would be ideal, but if she can't go through that right now for whatever reason, this is a nice option to help even out her smile. And again, she could pull it off. Situation here, you can see he's dropped in. We want to fill his lips out and get him into a little bit of a normal. So we did an upper and a lower, probably opened him up. If you have an upper and lower, you're probably going to be opened up at least, you know, close, or if not a little bit more than 2 millimeters. But he needed it. He was overclosed. He was sunken in. This gives him a smile. This one here is interesting. Not only did we straighten up her teeth, but we actually extended onto the gingiva, overextended over, I guess what you would call the margin, where the tooth and the tissue come together, so that we lengthen. We kind of do crown lengthening with this appliance. And you know, this appliance is 100% tooth-borne, right? It's resting on the teeth. There's almost zero movement. So it's not like it's going to sit there and rub the tissue. It's going to be rock solid. So if it's laying on the tissue and it's somewhat passive and there's no pain, it's not going to cause irritation or a problem. So, you know, kind of extending it up can kind of give that crown length. And again, if they at some point decide, you know what, I want to get this in crown bridge, well, let's work crown lengthening into this whole workup for this patient. So again, the color. The only thing that you want to be careful with here, if you have dark staining, is to make sure you do have some thickness. We just want to make sure that it's not, you know, super thin, and then you may see some of that that staining, that discoloration showing through.
Kris,
So that's the only thing. Yes.
I'm going to interrupt myself. Again, this is Mike Kolwick with Dental Masters. On that prior slide, when we were coming over the gingival margin, what would the thickness of the material be at that point, and what is the degree of relief, if any, onto the soft tissue?
So relief, I would do none. Especially if a regular impression was taken, because there's a little compression that happens anyways, and you do want to touch that tissue, because as they smile, you don't want their lip catching as they relax if there's a little catch there. So you want a little push on the tissue. And I mean, at the point, it's paper thin. And then as you transition up, you'll again be tenths of a millimeter coming to. So if you're up in here paper thin, you come into this area, you're a few tenths of a millimeter. As you get in this area, again, you're at the minimums, which are like 5 to 6 tenths, depending. You might want it to be fuller. But yeah, you're paper thin there. So there should be a nice smooth transition for that lip to ride over top of that joint.
I think, Kris, that's an important point for us to make, that we have a tremendous range of thickness with this material, from, you know, all the way from several millimeters thick to, as you just said, paper thin, without any fear of fracture or crazing of the material. That's a great asset in the material properties of what we have here with Snap-on Smile.
Actually, very correct. Matter of fact, the thicker the material gets, it's still crazy strong, but the weaker it gets, right? The thinner it gets, the more flexible and therefore more forgiving, and in a roundabout way, the stronger it becomes. So yeah, it's a really neat material. to work with. You know, it's 8 to 10 times stronger than most PMMAs, right? So we're not talking about just some other plastic. It's a highly crystalline plastic that's very, you know, we'll talk about it a little bit later, kind of what that plastic actually is, but it's pretty wicked stuff. And it's used in other industries in very harsh and tough environments. And there's no doubt that it works in our industry really, really well. Yep. So again, raising the vertical, right? Reestablishing the vertical we talked about. So, I mean, this is the use that excites me with this appliance, because there's nothing, it's scary to open. It's scary to do full roundhouse rehab, crown or bridge. This is the most awesome way to get the patient into the position cosmetically and positionally, so that they can try it and see if their headaches go away, see if their jaw clicking goes away. And if it does, you know, they could leave it in there and every few years replace these, and this could be their final solution to their issue. Or it may be the convincing thing to push them to spending, you know, tens of thousands of dollars on getting full roundhouse, crown or bridge done. So it's really, not only is it a tool that will help your patient, it's also a tool to be used as a sales tool. And it sounds bad because we're in the industry for helping people, but we are helping people. They may be deciding whether they buy a new car or getting this dentistry. And that new car that they have, you know, will last another 5 years nowadays, right? So maybe they just put that car off and actually make it so they can get a good night's sleep and they aren't in pain all day long, and they have a beautiful smile. So definitely a really cool tool. And like I was talking about earlier, if the patient says, yes, I want to go for this, let's do this, and they say, okay, well, this is going to be $30,000, I don't know, right? The patient's like, oh, I don't have that. Okay, well, let's see if you can get financing. Let's say they can't get financing for whatever reason. Well, you can kind of create your own little payment plan. So let's say you section it right here, and then you prep, and then you take the impression and or the scan with the rest of this appliance still in. So now all this work you did to establish a new vertical, the lab has to go back and either digitally articulate or manually articulate, right? And then you take this little piece here, load it up with composite or acrylic or Tooth-Borne and put it back in as the temporary, right? And then 2 weeks later, those crowns come back, place those crowns, and now the patient goes off for 8 months and saves money, or whatever amount of time it is, and then you section it over here. Prep, same process. Even this anterior piece from canine to canine will be surprisingly retentive over that period of time. One thing I have found is if it's not retentive, you know, because of the natural belly of the tooth just isn't there for this morphology of this patient, you can actually put just a little denture adhesive inside. It'll give it a little suction and help to hold it, just so they can get through that temporary time. I wouldn't recommend that for a patient who's wearing one of these long term, because it, you know, having that denture adhesive, I don't like the idea of that always in their mouth. But as a temporary kind of fix to hold it in, it works really, really well. All right, and an example here, this has a little bit of everything, right? We have discolored, mismatching teeth. We got diastemas. We got chips. You can tell by the way the lip's laying, he probably has been overcollapsed, and by the way the teeth look, he's been overcollapsed. So we put him into a new position and give him an upper or lower. Probably missing teeth back there as well. Same thing here, discoloration, chipped, beaten up his own teeth. And at the same time as this is partial, at the same time as it's cosmetic, it's also a Bruxer appliance, right? So now he's wearing upon this appliance rather than his natural teeth. Every once in a while, this material is tough stuff. This material is used in engines, wearing against chains. It's used in a lot of tough situations because it does wear very well. That being said, every once in a while you'll run into a patient that maybe has crown or bridge opposing it that isn't highly polished or something, and they can wear on it. Now, I've seen this in the past. It usually takes a good year or something before they start to wear, but they can wear. If you think that the patient may have a propensity for that, or if you see that in appliance, you can have the lab make the appliance and then also make you some thin Invisalign little shells that they can slide over it to wear, so that they can wear into that shell. And once they start to punch through the shell, they just put another shell on. And again, this is a very extreme circumstance, but if you guys ever run into that, it's a really good way to keep that appliance lasting. And you can have it just go on the linguals of the central and just make contact with the lowers, and then over the occlusion, the posterior, so aesthetically they don't really see it. But that's a good way of making sure that this appliance will last as long as possible in those patients that are just crazy bruxers.
Kris, another question.
Mhm.
Adjusting. We do provide and sell the Snap-on Smile adjusting kit for adjusting and repolishing. Can you comment on the value of that kit and where you might be using it in the clinical field?
Yeah. So I will show that a little bit later on, and we'll talk about that. But the material is really nice because it grinds about like acrylic. So the kit comes with some brushes, some burrs that are shaped to really get up inside of the, because you're going to have patients, you're going to put it in there and be like, oh, it's tight on this tooth. A lot like night guards. A lot of times when you place the night guards, they'll be like, oh, this one tooth here just feels a little achy. And there was just a little something with the impression or a little something with the processing that's pushing on that tooth a little bit. So you're going to have some indicating paste. You're going to go adjust. These burrs that come in the kit are kind of a good size to do some of those adjusting, as well as occlusally. There's some really good tools for that, and I'll show you those a little bit later on. But that kit's really nice because it kind of gives you everything from adjusting occlusion, adjusting the inside, to polishing it up after you do all that stuff.
Thank you, Kris.
Yep, just know that stuff grinds really, really nicely. So it's not like that kit is given to you because this stuff's really hard to work with. It's given to you because it's just the right shapes and sizes to really deal with the kind of unique adjustment that you got to do. And so we've gone from partials to bite opening, from cosmetics, kind of temporizing with these. Now we're going to kind of talk about having these go over implant sites, right? So the biggest reason that I would recommend these for a situation where you have implants placed is because we don't want pressure on that area. We don't want pressure on that ridge. And so this appliance will allow for total tooth supported. So you can see here, we've missed, all right, there's an implant placed here. The Snap-on's gonna go over top of all these teeth, which means as he chews, unlike a flipper, that every time he bites here, it's gonna push on that fresh surgical site. It's going to be supported by all the adjacent teeth, which is going to keep that appliance rigid in that area and keep very little to no pressure on that surgical site. You can even relieve it away, so it's totally passive to that site, because as this movement would happen with a regular partial, it won't with these appliances. So it's a nice option. Also, acetyl resin is used in heart valve parts and hip replacement joint parts because of its acceptance into the body. So I wouldn't want any other material next to a fresh surgical site than the acetyl resin. So it's a really nice option for going over a site while an implant situation, or an extraction even. Same thing, you got a fresh surgical site that's going to need to heal. You don't want a piece of acrylic that's essentially a sponge that'll hold bacteria and stuff next to that site. So one thing that you can run into every once in a while is a patient that just has very limited undercut on their natural dentition, very limited belly to their tooth. And so
just before you continue, sir, to go, just a quick question. The chemical name for this material is an acetyl resin, correct?
Correct, yes. So if you go online and look up an acetyl resin, you will find over 500 different formulations. So it's definitely a popular plastic that's used in all different ways. You know, this formulation is specifically designed for the dental industry, but you'll get some really good information if you just look up acetyl and kind of see the crazy things that are made with this stuff, because it's so tough.
Thank you.
Yep. And so cases with limited retention, you know, you don't want to make an appliance, put it in, and it just falls out, right? So here's some things that you can do. I mean, one thing you could do more simply is just add some composite bellies onto some of the teeth, and then take your impression and send that out. If you wanted to get more specific to make sure you did put enough, you can have a stent made by the lab. And so essentially it's pretty simple. The lab's going to create the bellies that they would need. Then they'll do a vacuum formed stent over top of that. And then what you can do is you'll load those little pockets up with the composite. You'll prep the tooth by etching and going through the normal process you would for bonding. And then you can place the stent in place, which will fill those pockets and give the lab the bellies, the undercut that it needs to make sure the appliance is actually going to stay in place. So I'm sure you guys are thinking in your mind, there's many ways that you could go about this process. You could do it with putty. You could do it with a lot of different things. You could do it on your own. Take a model and in your own lab, add some bellies, do a little putty matrix, go back in and do it. But this is just to get your mind working on if you see a situation kind of like this guy here, where not only does he have no bellies on his tooth, but he got such short clinical crowns. My goodness, how are you going to keep it staying in at all? Again, adding the composite, putting some bumps on there. Remember, this isn't going to be seen, so you can even get a little, you know, crazy on those teeth, because the look isn't going to matter, because you're probably going to be building this out and there's plenty of room there for it. You know, you could also use the denture adhesive trick. You know, if you find that, you know, you kind of made one and you realize after the fact that suction will kind of hold them in. It's just that denture adhesive. You know, I guess patients wear it all the time on their dentures, so I'm guessing as long as they use a limited amount, they'll be okay. All right, so you know, just to kind of reiterate or kind of go through the process of kind of walking through the case, right? So the biggest thing that I see in this list that's important is the impression. Probably the impression and the photo, right? The bite registration, if you're opening the bite, that's super crazy important. And of course, the posing model you'll need, right? So let's talk about the impression, right? So there's a couple things. One thing is just in general, the stability of the impression, right? It's what the laboratory is building the appliance on. It's like building your house on an uneven foundation. All measurements from that point on are going to be off. Things aren't going to be right. So in general, making sure that everything is really stable. The patient doesn't bite into a tray, doesn't flex a tray, anything like that, so you don't have an appliance that's rocking on the model. Secondly is that crease right there, right? As it goes along. We talked about that when we extended the gingiva, kind of did the crown lengthening on that case, that we need to have a little push into the gingiva in that instance. If we aren't lengthening, we need to come down into that sulcus really nicely and precisely. Because again, the patient's going to smile, and when they relax, they're going to be pulling their lip around this catch on their appliance. And then every time they bite into a sandwich or they do something, food's going to get up in there, and we're sitting there trying to get food out. If we have that margin adapted nicely, that's going to make for a nice seal aesthetically as well as functionally. So that's very important. I do find that there's a big issue with that. You know, and for a lab, sometimes we think it's crisp, we see a crease there, we make the appliance, and then it comes back with a new impression, and we put it, and we see it's lifted and there's a gap there. So making sure that that comes out crisp and nice is important. Jumping to the digital side, I'm not 100% sold on a scanned in full roundhouse arch impression. I definitely have done those, and those have worked, and then they cannot work. So you definitely want to be careful, especially as you're getting just first involved in this. We all know the analog way of taking impression. You're good at it. Until you get real comfortable, I would definitely like to lean towards that. If your only option is that scan, take it real slow. Make sure all of those pictures are stitching together really nicely, and it's picking up that, because what happens is that stitches around, if you get extended and it doesn't quite stitch right, now everything's kind of off from that point slightly. And it doesn't take a lot because these are all surrounding hard tissue, the teeth. And, you know, that's a rigid thing that it's on. And if something is off, it's just not going to want to go to place. And I don't, you know, you don't want to, and I don't want you to, and the lab doesn't want you to have to get in there and ream things out and spend a lot of time. We'd like you to go. It pops right
Chris,
there.
let me interject a point there. I think that it's really a matter of the clinician's comfort level.
Yep.
If, for example, if they're routinely using their intraoral scanner for splints, where they're taking a full arch impression for their splints and they're getting great results, to me that's indicative that they've got their scanning routine down.
Yep.
But if full arch scanning is not part of their current routine, they're new to it, yeah, I completely agree with you. Let's start with traditional impressioning. And we'll do some cases on the digital side as well, recognizing that if the digital side for full arch scans is new, it may make sense actually to do some dual impressions on those first couple cases.
Yep, just to make sure, you know, being careful that you're all on the same page. Like, you know, we talked about at the start, just cannot stress that enough. Photographs. We talked about getting that photograph initially. That's really important for the lab because, you know, one thing I've also found is patients who have really big gummy smiles, show a lot of gum when they smile, you really have to be careful because the teeth are such a forefront thing in their face, right? It's the thing that is the focal point. It is on most anybody anyways, but it's even more so for those patients. And I've really found that they can be the most critical. So if you find those teeth or have a bigger size or any of the things we talked about you think would jeopardize, you may reconsider or definitely have a talk with the patient about whether this appliance would be good for them. So a photograph for the lab will help you to help talk and make that decision if they see something that worries them. And it can make sure everyone's on the same page. And it's nice also, you know, just like in anything else, in your practice, you know, before and afters is nice, you know, and it's nice to have the snap-on smile before and after, because then again, keeping the patient's expectations real is you want to have real cases in there, you know, and the perfect ones that are in ads and stuff like that, you know, ones that you say, okay, well, look, you know, this patient, you know, look, we got them to where your smile is right now. You're at a 6 or 7. You need veneers to get to a 9 or 10. Right? You know, you can use it as a tool that way, or you can look, this patient has chipped teeth and some diastemas like you have, and look what we were able to do. So you can really use that to show what this appliance can do, good for a patient, or how this appliance is probably, you know, may not be the best option for that patient. And so taking pictures is really important to kind of work the case through, as well as with, you know, doing, you know, kind of showing the patients kind of, if you will, selling them on it or making sure they know what they're getting. Yeah, so polishing adjustment we kind of touched on, right? So adjusting these isn't like much different, generally speaking, than you deal with partials until you kind of get to kind of fitting them to place, right? So the occlusion, right? You're going to get it in. The lab's going to be opening the bite. As you know, anytime the lab opens a bite, that articulator swinging open. That geometry of that articulator could be different to how the patient's arch is swinging open. We see that a lot with night guards. You know, night guards, if we don't have a face bow, so that something is giving us that geometry of the occlusal plane as it relates to the condyle, then we're putting it on a generic articulator, and as that bite swings open, depending on how their occlusion is, that could swing more in the front or less in the front. So you're probably going to have to do some occlusal adjustment on these whenever you get in, just to make sure they're balanced. They aren't prematurely hitting somewhere. It's nothing unusual with partials and dentures and stuff like that. That's going to be very much the same. You can see carbides work fine on this, anything you're comfortable with. The rubber wheels are nice, and sandpapers. I like to sand the material away rather than removing the material away. And what I mean by that is carbides, when you're doing finer, you know, bigger bulk reduction, they work fine. When you're doing the finer details, sanding it away with like rubber wheels and stuff, it allows you to have control and make sure that you don't take chunks out or something, because it is plastic, it's not porcelain. So it doesn't take a lot to remove a good bit. So it controls you, it slows you down. Adjusting occlusion, I love that guy there, or anything like it, to where, again, you can kind of sand that material away. So you could do some bulk reduction, and then you can kind of smooth that, get those burr marks out of there with this, so that polishing becomes a much easier process. Polishing, the majority of the effort comes in removing the burr marks or the scratches. Once you get those done, it's really smooth, and that's where this kind of process really helps. Grinding on the inside, I like any tool that's kind of rounded on the end. Even like a number 8 round burr, or even smaller, is a nice one to kind of get up in there. This tool is nice round. You'll find sometimes the embrasures will kind of catch, because there is, we want to have an interproximal, so those will kind of be dipped in. Sometimes the path of insertion will make those kind of interfere, and you might need to smooth those off. This tool works really nice for that. And then just using a Robinson brush. Pumice and polish works pretty nice on this material. So I would recommend you use the brush with the pumice instead of a rag wheel, or if you use the rag wheel, use it on slow. But I think you'll find if you go through the process with the rag wheel and then you hit it with your Robinson bristle brush, that you'll have a nice shine going with just your denture polish. It'll really polish it up nice. So insertion, again, this is nothing that isn't normal for you placing everything from a denture to a night guard to a partial, right? So you're going to kind of practice, you're going to kind of adjust, pull their lip away. I'm not going to tell you how to do that. You guys know what you're doing with that, but you just want to kind of, you don't want to make sure the patient doesn't bite it into place until they really practice and get a feel for it. And just kind of run it through. You will find, we've opened up the occlusion a little bit. The incisal is going to be at a different point. So a lot of your S's, you can see your Mississippi's and your Sunset Strips, they're might have a teeny bit of a lisp. So you're prepared to give the patient confidence that they'll adjust in a week or two, and probably get rid of that pretty darn quickly, if not even quicker than a week or two. But yeah, getting it into place is nothing that you aren't used to. So, we talked about how strong the acetal is. We talked about how it's used in heart valve parts and hip replacement joint parts, and it's used in engines, and it's used in all these harsh environments. The material is a highly crystalline thermoplastic. So where other thermoplastics, like a Valplast, it's very different, but it's thermoplastic. The way that they have a flexibility is because they have gaps and spaces between the molecules. So as those bubbles squish, as you flex something, those bubbles squish, and that's how it can be flexible. Problem is those bubbles allow for stains, bacteria, smells to permeate. The acetyl resin has a crystalline structure that fills that gap, and that's why it can be flexible at the same time 100% dense. So when we talk about red wine and coffee and all these things don't penetrate, it will not penetrate. It will not get inside of it. Now, if a patient doesn't take care of it, things can stain the outside. If it gets a little dull, stains can attract, but you'll find you hit them with pumice, they come right off, and it'll look like the day it's made. You can put a drop of crazy glue on this material, let it set, and just flake it right off. So very resistant to anything adhering to it. That includes acrylics. So if you feel like you might have a situation where you want to add occlusions or do something, this may not be the material. But it also keeps the stains and anything else involved from adhering. In its base, it is a thermoplastic, right? So it's a material that's heated and liquefied and made into the pucks and different things like that. So, but it will not be affected by anything that you would put in the mouth. Well above 300 degrees it can handle. So I hope you're not putting that kind of heat in your mouth. And so to kind of finish up, show you a couple advanced cases. You can see here a lot of what we were talking about. A smile that's healthy, you can see things look okay, generally speaking. He just needs a better smile. Same thing here, right? Covered up the teeth, straightened things, bigger teeth, but actually pulls it off. Features are pretty large. It actually works.
Kris, I'm going to interject just a quick moment here.
Yep.
We do have the SOS Snap-on Smile adjusting and polishing kit available. And if you just text tonight or tomorrow the word kit to the following number, I just put it in the chat box. It's 707 200 2875. 707 200 2875. Just text the word kit and we'll make sure that we get the complete information to you regarding the kit itself, as well as the necessary adjustment technique for the kit on Snap-on Smile. Thanks, Kris.
Yep. And we're just finishing up, guys, so hang tight. Sorry we got the little late start, but we'll get you out almost on time. So again, teeth broken down, but generally healthy. Put them in something to get them by until they get through some processes, whatever the situation might be. So here's a couple of pearls. If you have a really wicked, like sometimes patients will really be flared and they may have a diastema or they're real flared, and sometimes a path of insertion, I don't care how flexible it is, it just won't go. You can section it down the central and bring the two pieces on together, so it'll be a two-piece appliance. Same thing with a really large diastema. Let's say the patient has like a 3 millimeter diastema and they want to take it down to like a millimeter, right? So we feel like we could take it down a little bit without the teeth getting too big, but we still need a diastema. Again, you can have a two-piece and then it goes into place, one on one side, one on the other, and you're still going to have plenty of retention in most situations. Free-end extensions, you can definitely go back if you've got canine or premolar. Patient has naturally all the way around. You can go premolars and molars back. That's going to work out just fine. The 3D views, talk with the lab and see if you're really worried about things. I'm sure that they can get you to get things designed to get you to take a look at it. The shades, it is a plastic, right? So it kind of talks about how to be careful with the shade, because it can be a little. The big thing is, if this material is a millimeter thick and less light's passing through it, it'll be a little darker. If it's 6/10 thick, it can be just a little lighter. Now teeth are like that too, all right? But it's plastic, it's not porcelain, so we're going to try to get you in the neighborhood of the shade, but all the teeth are going to be covered. It should be fine, but just be wary that this is, and I want to make sure everyone's on the same page that this is not porcelain veneers. If it was, it would be, $16,000 for the patient to get a case done. Instead, it's, a good bit less, and, they're getting what they want. That's why we're going to take them from a 1, 2, or 3 up to a 4 or 5 or 6, not all the way up to a 9 or 10, which I know the lab produces that kind of work with veneers, but the material is limited, but it does suit a specific patient. And then, so you'll notice some of the pictures had the holes in the occlusion. I think you'll find that the majority, unless you really request it, will come without. And I think it's good. It makes for a stronger appliance not having the holes. It makes for less in food impaction not having the holes. And I don't know that you're going to be able to close the occlusion that much more. So I don't feel like it's that much of an advantage. The only time the lab might have to do it is if they need more flex of the appliance. If there's a lot of undercut, they may have to incorporate the holes. But generally speaking, I think most of them you'll receive won't have those big occlusal openings. And then, yeah, if you're really looking to limit the bite, the size of the teeth, I think the lab's probably going to do that anyway. But you want to keep, kind of inform them. Look, I'd like to make these as small as possible, or just communicate with them directly, send pictures, and talk to them about it, and just. I think they're going to try to keep things as small as possible anyway, but reiterating that is important.
Kris, let me jump off of that just briefly here.
Yep.
The Snap-on Smile prescription that we have, which is on the Dental Masters website, really helps the clinician give us the necessary detail along with what you've identified as part of your presentation. So I really encourage our doctors to use the Snap-on Smile specific RX that we have. The other thing that I did want to mention is that in addition to the information on the kit, if you would like a starter kit, complimentary starter kit to get started with Snap-on Smile, again, just text the words SOS start to 707-200-2875, and we will be sure to get that sent out to you tomorrow. Thanks again, Kris.
Yep. And I'm just going to end with a couple of nice cases. You can see just the difference. She needed teeth. The teeth are bigger and they're filling up her smile, but she needed it, and then she pulls it off. And this guy here, big smile. You know this guy wasn't hiding these teeth. You know, these guys are really good at hiding, but look at that smile. And he was showing those all day long. And these teeth are, you know, long. You might have wanted to short it, but again, he pulls it off. He's got big features and what I really wanted to accomplish with all these before and afters is to give you a big variety. Some of them looked really perfect, and some of them are as good as they're going to look. And I just want to make sure, for your sake, for the patient's sake, for the lab's sake, to make sure everybody makes sure that the lab makes sure that the doctor knows what to expect from the appliance, and that the doctor makes sure the patient knows what to expect from the appliance, so that, you know, nobody's putting work in for nothing because the patient just refuses it because their expectations were just far beyond what this appliance could offer. All right, great. So yeah, I just want to reiterate that, you know, the lab that you choose to do this with is extremely important. These appliances are not easy to fabricate. The equipment that it takes to design and mill these can't be cheap equipment, and the training that they need to accomplish this is, you know, is high level. And that's what Mike has done, is he has his technicians properly trained, he has only the best equipment, and he's doing everything perfectly right. So you guys can have all the confidence in the world that, you know, that you'll be in good hands and that your appliances will be done properly.
Kris, let me interject, sir, with a question from Dr. Weinstein, which is, how long will this material last in the mouth, day in and day out?
Yeah, so I mean, this is the material that they hate in the landfills, that just doesn't deteriorate, right? It's tough stuff. You know, if it's designed super thin, a patient could drop it and step on it, just like anything else under normal dental, you know, in the mouth. The only thing I've ever seen to wear one out is when a patient just grinds the heck out of it. And like I said, it usually was natural dentition. It was usually crown and bridge that just didn't have a good polish. So it was almost like sandpaper rubbing on it. So that's a long-winded answer to say I would like to expect what you get out of a partial. So, you know, 3 years. I've seen them, you know, last 6, 7 years and look like the day they were made. But I would think kind of where insurance is on partials and stuff, you could kind of rely on that. You know, you tires on a Prius, you know, they might last you, you know, 60, 70, 80,000. Tires on a Corvette, if you drive it hard, they might only last you 10,000 miles. So it really depends on the patient, but I would kind of gauge it off of a partial type situation.
Well, and let me add to that. Certainly, you know, if we're talking about a flexible partial, you know, we can expect a number of years out of it. A cobalt chrome partial done properly can last many, many years with proper care and relines and repairs as needed. I would agree with you, Kris. In my experience with the acetal materials and with Snap-on, I would say a useful life of 3 to 5 years is reasonably expected. Mm-hmm. One of the nice things for us to remember with this is if the device is somehow damaged or lost, given the fact that it's been digitally fabricated, assuming no change in teeth or tissue, we're able to recreate the appliance literally within 24 hours.
Yep. That's the exciting thing with the digital age, you know, amongst other things, but it is nice to have that, that file sitting there waiting for you.
Any other questions, please feel free to type it in at this time, either in the Q&A or the chat. I'm going to give that another few seconds here. Kris, while we're waiting for any other questions, I have to tell you that in my lifetime in dental technology, which is 41 years full time, and I grew up in the dental lab field, this is a material that I sincerely and deeply appreciate because it solves a number of problems. It addresses the issue of a temporary for both conventional and implant restorations. You know, it's a really nice alternative. I think it's a superior alternative to an Essex. And then we go to the other end of the spectrum for the individual that is either dental phobic, they're afraid of the drill. Something like this is a really great way for them to experience firsthand what can be done with restorative and or cosmetic dentistry. And I think, you know, functionally, there are individuals out there that have challenges, like we see the gentleman in this picture, where they may not have the budget for it. And Snap-on Smile gives them the opportunity to have something that's going to make a difference in their life. So we're talking about addressing both the issues of function as well as aesthetics. And you know, they say the smile is the window to our soul and to our heart. And I know from experience, and you know from experience, and I know our attendees and fellow clinicians tonight know this, that when we can positively affect someone, not only with function, but also with aesthetics, with their smile, those are the things, pardon me, that we find extremely rewarding for the day in and day out of what we do. So Kris, I want to thank you because you've been involved with this material from the very beginning when it was first injected and going through the lost wax process. And we've been involved in that process from the very beginning as well. And now we're in the digital world. So now we've got a material that we can make thinner, better, faster, easier, and we can easily replicate if we have to do it again for whatever reason. So the digital world, this is a great example of how this material is now available to us in the digital world and allows us to take a great idea, a great material that's been around for a good number of years now, and bring it to the next level, the next generation. That's a benefit to patients throughout the entire spectrum of need. So along those lines, Kris, I want to thank you. I'm going to go now take a look. There was one other or two other questions that came in. The lab cost is, from our laboratory, is a little over $300 for partial coverage and $550 for a full arch. And the ADA code, Kris, I don't know that off the top of my head. Do you know it?
So, yeah, I don't know it off the top of my head, but I know you can base things off of, I mean, there's a couple of different ways that you could kind of angle it, and it really kind of depends, and you can send in descriptions of, but you could of course do it as a resin partial probably pretty easily because if it is replacing teeth. But yeah, that would be something you'd want to look in a little bit further, and it probably would depend on the insurance company as well.
Well, what I can do, everyone that has attended tonight will receive an email tomorrow. I'm going to look up the codes and do the work for everyone joining us tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. I will make sure that you have those ADA Code of Dental Terminology ADA codes for you. There was a request for that number to text. It's 707-200-2875. If you want to know more about the polishing and adjusting kit, just text kit, and then if you'd like a starter kit from us, from Dental Masters, complimentary from us, just please ask SOS START. And if you have any other questions, again, to that text number, feel free to ask. Those come to me, and I will be back in touch with you by tomorrow morning. Along those lines, everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. Kris, thank you as a colleague in dental technology and in dentistry for an excellent presentation. I'm glad we got the Zoom challenges worked out. Yep. And I wish everyone in the months and days ahead both safety and prosperity. On that note, good night.
Night.